Friends and viewer, let me tell you today a very interesting story. This is a common story. The name of this story is The Prince and the Mystic, or The Prince or a Fakir. So the story starts like this, that there was once upon a time a king who had no children. Now this king went and laid down to rest at a place where four roads met, so that everyone who passed had to step over him. At last a fakir came along, and he said to the king, "Man, why are you lying here?" He replied, "Fakir, 1,000 men have come and passed by. You pass on too." But the fakir said, "Who are you, man?" The king replied, "I am a king, fakir of goods and gold. I have no leg, but I have lived long and have no children. So I have came here and have laid me down at the crossroads in order to my sins and offenses have been very many. So I have come and I am laying here that man may pass over me, and perchance my sin may be forgiven me, and God may be merciful to me." The fakir answered, "O king, if you have children, what will you give me?" "Whatever you ask," fakir answered the king. "Whatever you ask." The fakir said, "Of goods and gold I have no lack, but I will say a prayer for you, and you will have two sons. One of those sons you will take, and the other." Then he took out two sweetmeats and handed them to the king and said, "King, take these two sweetmeats and give them to your wife. Give them to your wife you have loved best." The king took the sweetmeats and put them in his bosoms. Then the fakir said, "King, in a year I will return, and of the two sons who will be born to you, one is mine and the other is yours." The king said, "Well, I agree with these terms. I will agree with this term." Then the fakir went on his way, and the king came home and gave one sweetmeat to each of these two wives. After some time, two sons were born to the king. Then what did the king do but place those two sons in an underground room which he had built in the earth? Some time passed, and one day the fakir appeared and said, "King, bring me that son of yours. Bring me that son of yours." What did the king do but bring two slave girls' sons and present them to the fakir? While fakir was sitting there, the king's sons were sitting down below in their cellar, eating their food. Just then a hungry ant had carried away a grain of rice from their food and was going along with it to her children. Another stronger ant came up and attacked her in order to get this grain of rice. The first ant said, "O ant, why do you drag this away from me? I have long been lame in my feet, and I have got just one grain, and I am carrying it to my children. The king's sons are sitting in the cellar eating their food. You go and fetch a grain from there. Why should you take mine from me?" On this, the second ant let go and did not rob the first, but went off to where the king's sons were eating their food. On hearing this, the fakir said, "King, these are not your sons. Go and bring those children who are eating their food in the cellar." Then the king went and brought his own sons. The fakir chose the eldest son and took him away and set off with him on his journey. When he got home, he told the king's son to go out and to gather fuel for him. So the king's son went out to gather cow dung, and when he had collected some, he brought it in. Then the fakir looked at the king's son and put on a great pot and said, "Come round here, my pupil." But the king's son said, "Master first and pupil after." The fakir told him to come once, he told him twice, he told him 3 times, and each time the king's son answered, "Master first and pupil after." Then what happened that the fakir made a dash at the king's son, thinking to catch him and throw him into the cauldron. There were about 100 gallons of oil in this cauldron, and the fire was burning beneath it. Then the king's son lifted the fakir, gave him a jerk, and threw him into the cauldron, and he was burned and became roast meat. He then saw a key of fakir's lying there. He took his key and opened the door of the fakir's house. Now many men were locked up in this house. 2 horses were standing there in a hut of the fakirs. 2 greyhounds were tied up there. 2 simurgs were imprisoned, and 2 tigers also stood there. So the king's son let all the creatures go and took them out of the house, and they all returned thanks to God. Next he let out all the men who were in prison there. So what happened next, that he took away those 2 tigers and animals from there, and took away those animals from there, and the 2 hounds, he took away the 2 simurgs, and with them he set off for another towards another country, the king's son. And as he went along the road, he saw above him a bald man grazing a herd of calves, and this bald man called out to him, "Fellow, can you fight at all?" The king's son replied, "When I was little, I could fight a bit, and now if anyone wants to fight, I'm not so unmanly as to turn my back. Come, I will fight with you. I'll fight you." The bald man said, "If I throw you, you shall be my slave, and if you throw me, I will be your slave." So they got ready and began to fight, and the king's son threw that bald man. On this the king's son said, "I will leave you my beast here, my simurg, tigers and dogs and horses. They all stay here while I go to the city to see the sight. I appoint the tiger as guard over my property. And you are my slave too. You must stay here with my belonging." So the king's son started off to the city to see the sight and arrived at a pool. He saw that it was a pleasant pool and thought he would stop and bath there, and therewith he began to strip off his clothes. Now the king's daughter, who was sitting on the roof of the palace, saw his royal marks, and she said, "This man is the king. When I marry, I will marry him and no other." So she said to her father, "My father, I wish to marry." "Good," said her father. Then the king made a proclamation, "Let all men, great and small, attend today in the hall of audience, for the king's daughter will today take a husband." All the men of the land assembled there, and the traveler prince also came, dressed in the fakir's clothes, saying to himself, "I must see this ceremony today." He went in and sat down there. The king's daughter came out and sat in the balcony and cast her glance around all the assembly. She noticed that the traveler prince was sitting in the assembly in fakir's attire, in the fakir dress. The princess said to her handmaiden, "Take this dish of henna, go to that traveler dressed like a fakir and sprinkle scent on him from the dish." The handmaiden obeyed the prince's order, went to him and sprinkled the scent over him. Then the people said, "The slave girl has made a mistake. But she replied, the slave girl has made no mistake. This her mistress has made the mistake. On this, the king married his daughter to the fakir, who was really no fakir, but a prince. What fate had decreed came to pass in that country, and they are married. They were married, but the king of that city became very sad in his heart, because when so many chiefs and nobles were sitting there, his daughter had chosen none of them, but had chosen that fakir. But he kept his thought concealed in his heart. One day the traveler prince said, let all the king's son-in-law come out with me today to hunt. People said, what is this fakir that he should go a-hunting? However, they all set out for the hunt and fixed their meeting place at a certain pole. The newly married prince went to this tiger and told his tiger and hounds to kill and bring a great number of gazelles, hogders, and markhor. Instantly they killed and brought in a great number. Then taking with him these spoils of the chase, the prince came to the pole settled on as a meeting place. The other prince's son-in-law of the king of that city also assembled there, but they had brought in no game, and now the prince had brought a great deal. There they arrived, returned to the town, and went to the king, their father-in-law, to present their game. Now that king had no son. Then the new prince told him that in fact he too was a prince. At this, the king, his father-in-law, was greatly delighted and touched him by the hand and embraced him. He seated him by himself, saying, O prince, I return thanks that you have come here and became my son-in-law. I am very happy at this, and I make over my kingdom to you. So this is the story of the prince and the mystic, or the prince and the fakir. I hope you will enjoy this. Kindly subscribe my channel. Thank you very much.